The rain hammered against the hospital windows like a symphony of desperation, each drop echoing the fears that filled every corner of the pediatric ward. In room 314, 8-year-old Emma Rodriguez sat quietly in her wheelchair, her once vibrant brown eyes now dimmed by months of chemotherapy treatments. The colorful butterfly stickers on her bald head couldn't quite mask the exhaustion that seemed to weigh down her tiny frame. But there was something else there too, a flicker of determination that her illness hadn't been able to touch. Emma had been fighting leukemia for 7 months now, and today marked what could be her last day at Children's Memorial Hospital in Chicago. The doctors had done everything they could, and tomorrow she would go home for what they gently called comfort care. But Emma had a plan, one that required more courage than any 8-year-old should ever need to summon. Down in the hospital's maintenance department, Jake Thompson was finishing his shift. At 35, Jake had been working as a janitor at the hospital for 12 years, ever since he dropped out of college to care for his sick mother. He'd never married, never had children of his own, but somehow he'd found his calling in the quiet hallways of this place where hope and heartbreak lived side by side. The kids called him Mr. Jake, and he knew every one of them by name. As Jake pushed his cart toward the elevator, he noticed a small figure in a wheelchair near the hospital's main entrance. Emma was sitting alone, clutching a worn teddy bear and looking out at the stormy night with an expression far too serious for someone her age. Jake had seen Emma around the ward many times over the past months, always with her parents or the nursing staff, but never alone like this. Something wasn't right. Jake approached carefully, the way he'd learned to do with frightened children over the years. Emma looked up at him with those big brown eyes, and he could see she'd been crying. "Can I help you with something, sweetheart?" Jake asked, crouching down to her level. Emma hesitated for a moment, then took a deep breath that seemed to come from somewhere much deeper than her small chest. "My name is Emma, and I need someone to help me with something really important. Are you busy right now?" There was something in her voice that caught Jake off guard. Not the usual childish request for a snack or a game, but something urgent and profound. He glanced around the lobby, noting that it was past visiting hours and most of the staff had gone home. "What do you need help with, Emma?" Emma's grip tightened on her teddy bear. "I need someone to take me up to the roof. I know there are stairs in the back of the building, the ones the workers use. I can't use the elevator because it needs a special card, and I can't walk up all those stairs by myself anymore." Jake felt his heart sink. He'd worked in hospitals long enough to recognize what this might mean. A desperate child, facing the unthinkable, perhaps planning something tragic. But as he looked into Emma's eyes, he didn't see despair. He saw something else entirely. "Emma, honey, why do you need to go to the roof? It's storming pretty badly out there." Emma looked down at her teddy bear, then back up at Jake. Her lower lip trembled, but her voice remained steady. "Today was supposed to be my little brother's birthday. He would have been 6 years old, but he died 2 years ago from the same thing I have. Before he got really sick, we used to sneak up to our apartment building's roof and look at the stars together. He always said that when people die, they become the brightest stars in the sky." Jake felt something tighten in his chest. He'd seen enough sick children to know that Emma was probably sicker than she was letting on, and the weight of what she was carrying seemed impossibly heavy for such small shoulders. Emma continued, her words coming faster now, as if she was afraid she might lose her courage. "The doctors told my parents today that I'm going home tomorrow, but I heard them talking when they thought I was sleeping. I know what that really means. Before I go, I want to tell my brother happy birthday. I want to find a star and tell him that I'll see him soon and that I'm not scared." The rain continued to pound against the windows, but inside the quiet hospital lobby, Jake felt as if the whole world had suddenly become very still. This wasn't about despair or giving up. This was about love, about a little girl who wanted to honor her brother's memory before facing her own uncertain future. Emma looked up at him with eyes that held more wisdom than most adults ever acquire. "I know you don't know me very well, Mr. Jake, but I've watched you for months. You're always kind to everyone, even when they're having bad days. You helped Mrs. Patterson find her glasses last week, and you always make sure Tommy in room 302 has extra chocolate pudding, because it's his favorite. I trust you. Will you help me?" Jake knelt there for a long moment, feeling the weight of this little girl's request. Every hospital policy, every safety regulation, every logical adult thought told him to call the nurses, to take Emma back to her room, to find her parents. But sometimes, kindness requires us to see beyond rules and regulations to the human heart that's asking for help. Okay, Emma, I'll help you. The service stairs were narrow and dimly lit, winding up to the core of the old hospital building. Jake carried Emma in his arms while a security guard friend has brought her wheelchair, taking each step slowly and carefully. Emma was lighter than Jake had expected, and he could feel how fragile she'd become, but she never complained, never asked him to stop or go back. As they climbed, Emma talked about her brother Miguel. She told Jake about how Miguel used to make up stories about the constellations, how he convinced her that shooting stars were really messages from people who loved each other, and how he'd promised to always watch over her from the sky. Her voice grew stronger with each story, as if talking about Miguel was giving her energy. The roof access door was heavy and stuck from disuse, but Jake managed to push it open. The storm had passed while they'd been climbing, leaving behind a clear autumn night with a sky so full of stars it took their breath away. The city lights of Chicago twinkled below them like earthbound constellations, and above them stretched the infinite wonder of the universe. Jake gently set Emma in her wheelchair and positioned it, so she could see the entire sky. Emma sat quietly for several minutes, just looking up at the stars with an expression of pure wonder. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she began to speak to the sky. "Happy birthday, Miguel. I found you. You're the brightest one, just like you promised you'd be. I wanted to tell you that Mama and Papa are going to be okay. I told them about all the stories you used to tell me, and now they tell them to other kids in the hospital. And I wanted you to know that I'm not scared anymore, because I know you're watching over me." Jake stood back, giving Emma her private moment with her brother among the stars. As he watched this brave little girl saying goodbye to someone she loved, he felt something shift inside his own heart. He'd spent years taking care of other people in small, quiet ways, but he'd never realized how profound those simple acts of kindness could be until this moment. Emma turned to look at Jake, and he was amazed to see that she was smiling. Not the forced smile of someone trying to be brave, but a genuine expression of peace and joy. "Thank you for bringing me here, Mr. Jake. I know it was against the rules, and I know you could get in trouble, but this was the most important thing I needed to do." As they made their way back down the stairs, Emma told Jake one more story about how Miguel had always said that angels weren't people with wings, but ordinary people who chose to help others when they needed it most. She said she thought Jake might be one of those angels. The next morning, Jake learned that Emma's parents had found a note she'd left on her bedside table. In it, she'd written about their trip to the roof, about finding Miguel's star, and about how grateful she was to have met an angel who helped her say goodbye to her brother properly. But Emma had also written something else. She'd asked her parents to make sure that Jake knew how much his kindness had meant to her, and she'd included a drawing of a star with Jake's name written inside it. What Jake didn't expect was a phone call he received 3 weeks later. Emma's mother, Maria Rodriguez, was crying as she spoke, but these were tears of joy. Emma's latest test results had shown something the doctors were calling miraculous. Her cancer was in complete remission. The doctors couldn't explain it, but Maria was convinced it had something to do with the peace Emma had found that night on the roof. Emma wanted to speak with Jake herself, and when he heard her voice on the phone, stronger now, filled with the excitement of a little girl who'd been given a second chance at life, he had to sit down to keep from falling over. "Mr. Jake," Emma said, "I wanted to tell you something. Miguel visited me in a dream after that night on the roof. He told me that helping other people find their way to say goodbye when they need to is one of the most important jobs in the world. He said that's why you're here, and that's why I'm going to get better, so I can help other kids the way you helped me." 6 months later, Emma returned to Children's Memorial Hospital, not as a patient, but as a volunteer. She and Jake started a program they call Miguel's Stars, where they help other sick children and their families find ways to honor their loved ones and find peace in the midst of difficult times. Emma's hair had grown back in soft brown curls, and her eyes had regained all their brightness, but she still carried that same wisdom and compassion that had touched Jake's heart that stormy night. Jake often thought about that evening when a little girl had asked a stranger for help with something that seemed impossible. He learned that sometimes the most important thing we can do for another person isn't to solve their problems or fix what's broken, but simply be present with them in their moment of need, to offer our strength when there isn't enough, and to trust that kindness has a power we can't always see or understand. Emma's story reminds us that compassion doesn't require grand gestures or perfect solutions. Sometimes it just requires us to say yes when someone asks for help, even when we're not sure how it will all work out. It reminds us that every person we meet is carrying something heavy, and that our willingness to help them carry that load, even briefly, can change everything. The next time someone asks you for help, whether the child who needs to say goodbye to a brother among the stars, an elderly neighbor who needs groceries, or a co-worker who just needs someone to listen, remember Emma and Jake. Remember that kindness is always the right choice, that ordinary people can be angels for each other, and that sometimes the smallest act of compassion can lead to the most extraordinary miracles. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video and share it with someone who might need to be reminded of the power of human kindness. Subscribe to Pure Kindness Stories for more true tales of compassion that will restore your faith in the goodness of people. And remember, you never know when you might be someone else's angel, so keep your heart open to those moments when kindness calls your name.